Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we like to say here at Shady Acres Woodshop, howdy! Today I have a piece of Sycamore. This piece has several cracks and checks in it, so I've taken a little bit of time and put some CA in a lot of those cracks. Probably missed a couple. And I have this large indentation, natural indentation here. So I think I'm going to go with a bowl shape of a narrow base and a wide mouth in an effort to try and get rid of this. Normally, of course, this is something I want to keep, but I think it's going to limit whatever I could do with this bowl in any other shape. So I'm gonna make that go away. This is a 9-inch diameter, 3 inches deep. Let me get my mask and face shield on. I have a freshly sharpened 5/8 inch bowl gouge. We're gonna be turning at 750 RPM. Stand by. Make some nice curlies. I think this is going to have some real pretty grain to it. Well, that was pretty quick, and that's just exactly what I had in mind. So it's time for sanding. I'm going to clean my area up here just a little bit, and we'll get to it. I'll start with 80 grit, and I'll work up through 400 at least. Maybe a little higher on this piece. I'm hoping some real nice grain is going to come out of this. And then I'm going to vacuum between each grit, as well as using my compressed air to blow it off between each grit. And like I said, I'll work up through 400, and I'll bring you back when it's time to put some kind of finish on here. Well, I'm going to try a finish that's very out of character for me. I've never used CA on anything bigger than maybe a pen or a whistle or some small object. And this isn't huge, but it is 9-inch diameter. 3 inches deep, and I'm gonna put a CA finish on here. And I'm not an expert at this at all, and I'm not gonna wear gloves. Maybe I'll be sorry about that, but the couple of times I did try it with gloves made the glue stick to the gloves. So this is what I'm gonna try, some thin CA. I've got some folded up paper towels here, and I'm just gonna put it on. And again, I'm not an expert. I know some guys would go like this. Captain Eddie would. He just put it on there and spread it out. I'm not going to do that because it seems like I tried that once and that made a huge mess. So I'm just going to put it right on here, right on the paper towel. Probably going to be sorry I don't have gloves on. And then I'm just going to go like this. I know you have to keep it moving. Got a little bit on my lathe bed there already. Let me mop that up. I've got 4 of these, and it sure makes a smell as it dries. Oh, I did sand this up through 1500. So this time I'll start at the top and I'll work my way back this way. Just trying to get some good coverage. Maybe wrap it around there. And then that one's done. Move on to the next one. I'm not sure what I'm going to use in between coats, and maybe I should stop now and sand that up. I think I will do that. And I don't know how many coats to put on. I don't feel like that covered really well, but it seems to be working. So I'm going to let that set for, I don't know, a couple of minutes. And steel wool. Maybe I should go back to the 1500 that I used. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll go back to the 1500 grit sandpaper I used to try and smooth that out a little bit. I don't know how many coats you need to put on. Seems to be drying already, but still, I'll give it a couple of minutes and sand it up with 1500, and we'll try another coat. I'll speed it up here a little bit for sanding. About 400. Something tells me this is going to take more than a couple of coats, although that looks pretty decent. Certainly I'm going to put another coat on, but covered better than I thought it did. Okay, I'll try it again. Sure would feel better with gloves on, but I know it just took the fingertips right off last time I did this with gloves. About 100 RPM. Alright, that's 2 coats. Again, I'll let it set a bit and we'll go back to the 1500 grit paper. Okay, let's try the 3rd coat. I had a little trouble sanding off the 2nd coat. I think I got it on too thick up near the top of the bowl. Oh, that's a little fast, isn't it? So I'm going to let that dry before I put on another coat. Anyway, I had a little trouble getting it off using 1500, so I had to go down to 600 and then back up to 1500. And it's just smooth as glass, but it doesn't look quite as nice as I'd like it to look. I'd like it to look like glass and not just feel like glass. And I know I've got these cracks in here that kind of detract from the appearance, but that's okay. This is just kind of an experiment. I've thought about wet sanding. I don't know. Do you wet sand CA? Who knows? Maybe. It looks a little smoother this time than it did last time, so we're probably good. I'll bring you back in a bit. I've applied 6 coats, and I learned a little something in the process here. The CA finish builds kind of slowly. I'm probably not telling you anything. I guess I'm telling myself something. And I know that 6 coats is not a lot. Some guys put 20 coats on a pen. I'm not going to do that. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. This last coat, the 6th coat, went on really easily, where the other coats gave me a little bit of trouble. And this one doesn't even require any sanding. It's just super smooth. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I may put more coats on when I have finished the inside. I might put some additional coats on the outside at that same time. But I'm anxious to get it turned around and hollowed out, and that's what we're going to do next. I've taken the piece off of the woodworm screw, and now I'm just going to chuck up the tenon that I turned. And as always, I leave the chuck loose. I bring up the tailstock and then drive that tenon into the chuck so that it's nice and square, nice and tight, no issues. And I suppose I do this because I'm an old guy and I don't trust my thumb pushing on the center here. It just takes an extra second to do. And I don't think we're going to need tailstock support here. The piece is only, what did I say, 9 inches? What did I say? Can't remember now. 8 inches. So I have sharpened up my 5/8 inch bowl gouge. I'm going to get my mask and face shield on, and we're going to get to hollowing this out. 900 RPM. Well, I'm at 1/8 inch sides, except at the top here I'm about a 1/16 inch, but it tapers down nicely. And then I've got about a 1/2 inch bottom, and I think I'm going to leave it that thick. I want this to have some stability because it does have such a narrow base. I want a little extra weight at the bottom to hold it in place wherever it's going to sit. So I think I'm about done, except I think I will do just a little bit of scraping. It's not a bad finish, but it's not the best either. So let me sharpen up my scraper, or at least put a burr on it, and we'll get to scraping. I think we got it. Yep. Time for sanding. So as always, I'm starting with 80 grit, and I'll work up through 400 grit with the 2-inch sanding discs, and then I will switch to strip sandpaper and sand up through 1500 grit, just like I did on the outside. And then it'll be time to apply some of that CA finish. I'll bring you back when it's time for that. The sanding's done and it looks pretty nice to me. So now it's time for more CA. This is kind of a balancing act. I know you have to keep it moving, but you don't want to get it stuck to your fingers. So far so good. So I'm going to let that sit for 2-3 minutes, and then 1500 grit. I'm standing back because the fumes are pretty bad. 1500 grit sandpaper and 5 more coats at least, and then maybe we'll put more coats on the outside as we put them on the inside. I'm not sure. So I'll bring you back in a bit. This actually feels like a pretty smooth finish without sanding, but I feel like I need to sand anyway. So we'll try about 400 RPM. Well, isn't any smoother, but maybe it's doing some good, I don't know. I'm just going to take a clean paper towel and wipe out the dust, if there is any dust. Probably is. And just for good measure, and we're ready for a second coat. And since I started on the inside last time, I'll start on the outside this time. Just trying to get it an equal coat. And just a little bit to the rim. And let it set. So that's what I'll be doing for the next 15-20 minutes. I'll bring you back in a bit. Well, I learned a few things using CA as a finish on a piece this size. It's real easy on a pen or some smaller object. On this it was difficult to get good coverage. I think the idea is to load up your paper towel or whatever you're applying it with pretty well, and then just go real slow to get good coverage. And even then, by the time I got out here to the rim, it was getting a little thin about in this area. So I think I've got about, gosh, I don't know, 8, maybe 10 coats on here, inside and out. And it seems to be pretty dang flawless. I'm very happy with it, and it's just glass smooth. So I would probably do this again. One thing I did learn, and another thing I learned, was steel wool. I used 4/0 steel wool after having tried 1500 grit sandpaper, and that just kind of clogs up, and then it just kind of makes a mess of it. But steel wool was real easy, quick. I spun it at about 1000 RPM, and it just took it right down. And it just looks real good to me. I hope you like it. So now it's time to get it off of the chuck and onto a block of wood, which I'm going to screw onto a woodworm screw. So let's do that. Oh, another positive thing about using CA, this piece does have some cracks in it, right here, and 3 or 4 of them over here, and you can't feel them. You can't get your fingernail in there. I think the CA just sealed them up real nice, so that's a plus. Okay, so we got that block of wood on there. Then we're going to put this on, non-slip material, and then our bowl. Bring up the tailstock. I've still got my center hole there for alignment. So we'll lock that down, get the tool rest in place, and we'll commence to removing that tenon. We'll start out at about 500 RPM with a 3/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge. I want to leave this little button in the middle, but I want to kind of round over this edge. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to switch to a 3/8 inch swept back bowl gouge, and I'm going to readjust my tool rest to get in here a little tighter, and slow the speed down around 200 just so it's controllable, and apply the bottom edge of the bowl gouge, the bevel, against the bottom of the bowl towards the headstock. And I'll do that using my right hand, and on my left hand I've got the switch, and as soon as that little nub stops turning, then we know we're through, and we hit the switch and we're done. A fair amount of pressure towards the bottom of the bowl with that bevel, and that's what'll keep it up there like that. See, I quit turning, we're good. Couldn't be easier, and it couldn't really leave less mess. I've just got a little nub there to sand off, but of course I need to sand this whole area, so I'll do that over here on the workbench. I don't talk about safety a lot on this channel. I figure I work in a manner that feels safe to me, and I feel all of you work in a manner that feels safe to you, and that's probably a good idea. But I am going to mention working with this CA. Holy smoke. It might seem like 20 seconds has passed since you saw me putting the CA finish on the bottom, but it's more like nearly an hour. And the reason is because I loaded up my pad of paper towel with the CA and then leaned over and applied it, and it, you know, kind of feels like you're applying shoe polish or something. So I wasn't real concerned. And then holy smoke, my lungs filled, my nose filled, my eyes filled, smoke coming off of that sucker. I had to run in the house and put eye drops in my eyes, and all the way in there I'm thinking, boy, I hope this stuff isn't like accelerant. I hope those eye drops aren't like accelerant. I don't know what's in them. Who knows what's in them? But I put it in there and I feel much better now. Came back out and sure enough, put a second coat on. This time I put it on quickly, kind of looking away, set down the paper towel and ran for it, and that worked pretty good. The third coat I put on, I got smart and pointed a fan across the bottom of the bowl, and that took all of the odor away and smoke away. So that's probably the way to go. But just a word to the wise, that doesn't mean I'd never do this again, because I most likely will, because I'm so happy with the finish on this piece. And yes, that pile of ribbons came out of the inside of this bowl. That's the only place they came from. I've got a wastebasket over here full of the outside of the bowl. So that's quite a pile for a little 8-inch bowl. But it turned out really good, and that's why I would do it again. It's just nearly a flawless finish. I say nearly. I don't see any flaws in it, but someone else might. The bottom finished up real nicely. Like I said, the cracks filled in. It feels like a real substantial piece, while at the same time being quite delicate. Quite thin at the rim here. So I am pretty proud of this one. I like this one. And I learned my lesson, and please learn from my lesson. If you like this video, thumbs up please, I'd sure appreciate it. Your comments are always welcome and I respond to all of them. If you're a subscriber, thank you very kindly. I truly appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos, about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop, signing off.